Please confirm to me. All of you are getting my voice on the screen. Guys, please confirm to me. All of you are getting my voice on the screen. Those are attending in online. Guys, please confirm to me. All of you are getting my voice on the screen. Those are attending in online. Right. Right. Good morning, guys. And check it what we completed there in the last session. I think so. We are discussing about Harsha. Continue. We are discussing about the bean concepts in a Spring framework. Inside the bean concepts, what we understood there, one point here I want to specify to you. What is that point here? What exactly the meaning of the bean are given there? Can you tell me what is the meaning of the bean? Bean is a software, or maybe bean is a reusable software component. It is a normal Java class, contains properties and behaviors, where properties with respect to the members of the class and behaviors may be like what their setters and getters only. Immutable, sorry, like what their accessor methods and mutator methods. This is setter methods and getter methods. Okay, fine. We will use this bean component in almost all the advanced technologies and frameworks, like in EJVs or a Hibernate or a Spring framework, like and so on. So many in a different forms. To use these Java bean components to prepare the Java bean components in a Spring applications system. Right, sir. In Spring applications, if we want to use Java bean components, there we have to go for a set of rules and regulations. What set of rules and regulations here we have to prepare there? Almost all 6 or 7 number of rules and regulations I've given. First one is what? In Spring applications, every bean must be a POSO class. It should not be extended. It should not implement any predefined library except java.io.serializable. All bean classes in Spring framework must be declared as public, non-abstract, and non-final. Public is to make available scope of the bean class to the IOC container to create an object. Non-abstract is to allow to create object. Non-final is to extend one bean class to another bean class. Next one. In a bean class, we have to declare all properties as private and all methods as public in order to improve encapsulation. That I already explained to you clearly. Next one is after completion of this. Another point here what I've given. If we want to provide any constructor explicitly in a Java bean component, then it should be a public and zero argument constructor, but zero argument or parameters constructor depends on the requirement we are able to prepare. Next one. In Java bean components, if you want to generate your own hash code values for the bean components, when we create objects, not to use default hash coding mechanisms, there we have to override object class provided hash code method. And if you want to provide your own comparison mechanism while comparing two bean components, there we have to use like what there we have to go for, we have to override equals method in Java bean components. Right, sir. So these are the various things here we provided. Next one is I provided one more point. What was that point here? I specified there clearly. In Spring applications, listen carefully. In Spring applications, after defining bean class, in Spring applications, after defining bean class, we must provide all the configuration details of the Spring to the Java bean. We must define, we must provide all the bean class information, class details to the IOC container. Understand my point or not? So we have to provide bean configuration details to the IOC container. So here only I want to say one point. What is that point here we have to say? No, that point would be In how many ways we are able to provide beans configuration details to the IOC container? There are three ways to provide beans configuration details to the IOC container. What are the three ways here? First one, we can understand XML configuration. Second one is Java configuration. And third one is annotations configurations. Understand my point? I think I have not given this point. No, now I'm trying to include this point here. Observe carefully. After defining bean class, we have to give bean class information to the IOC container in order to create object. To provide bean configuration details, there are three ways. What are the three ways to provide bean configuration details? No. First one is XML configurations. Second one is Java configurations. Third one is what there? Annotations configurations. Okay, right, sir. Now let me write that information. No problem. Just later on we can see that in the notes. I want to update this one. In Spring applications, after defining bean class, we must configure bean class. We must provide all the beans configuration details. We must provide all the beans configuration details to the IOC container in order to create bean objects. Okay. Next one is what there after that to provide bean configurations details to the IOC container. There we have to use the following three approaches. There we have to use the following three approaches. Anyway, you can see that content in our notes there. Don't worry for it. What exactly the three approaches here we are going to see there. First one is XML configurations, XML based configurations. And second one is Java based configurations. And third one is annotation based configurations. Annotations based configuration. Overall, these are the three configurations here we are able to provide. Right, sir. There we have seen XML based configurations. There we have seen XML based configurations. We started already XML based configurations. In XML based configurations, if you want to provide bean configurations, to provide beans configurations in XML, we have to use the following tags. Right, sir. Observe carefully what I am telling there. In Spring applications, after defining bean class, we must provide all the beans configuration details to the IOC container in order to create bean objects. Okay, to provide all bean configuration details to the IOC container, there we have to use the following three approaches. What are the three approaches here? Now tell me. One is XML based configuration. Second one is Java based configuration. Third one is what there? Annotation based configurations. Okay, where we started with like what there? XML based configurations. To provide beans configurations in XML, we have to use the following tags. What are the various tags here we have to use there? Bean tag here we are using, where ID attribute, name attribute, class attribute, and scope attribute here we have used. There I explain about class attribute. Class attribute will take what there? Fully qualified name of the respective class. There I given one important interview question, the difference between ID attribute and name attribute. ID attribute and name attribute, what is the difference here? ID attribute will take single identity for the bean component, but name attribute will provide multiple identities for the bean components. Okay, where multiple identities we are able to provide with separators. What are the separators now? Either we can use space, or we can use comma, or we can use what there? Semicolon. With all these specifications, we are able to provide this. Now here, where I given an example, bean name is equal to b1 comma b2 comma b3. b1 is the actual identity, b2 b3 are the alias names to the b1. Alias names in the sense duplicate names for respect to b1. Right, sir. Next one is, see, if we observe the material where some examples also were given, that all the examples are shown in the case of program care. Different approaches are shown everything in the program. You can check that material there. You are able to get the total awareness. Right, sir. Next one. In Spring application, and one more thing I'm telling to you, running notes I'm typing there. Maybe if anything program inside the program, if I do any modifications, that may not be available in the notes. Understand my point, but in the material I've included that content also. Try to check once there. But this running notes is up to your present class understanding purpose only. I may not provide the total information inside this, but I given material to you. Whatever the material I given there, where every case I define, every program I define, there we are able to get that full-fledged information. But here only we can see only runtime up to how much it is possible to type the content up to that all I'm giving there. Try to utilize this. Right, sir. Next one is after that, multiple identities are not possible in alias names. But if you want to give alias names to the, if you want to provide alias names to the beans now, then we have a separate tag. Explicitly, if you want to provide alias names to the beans now, there we have to use like what there alias, where name is equal to existed bean identity value, ID1 for example. Next one is alias. Alias is equal to there we have to provide like what there ID2. Then ID2. Now, what is the meaning of this one? You know, ID2 is a duplicate name for ID1. ID1 is already assigned for a particular bin. So by using ID2, by using ID1, we are able to get it. That is one point here. Next one is it possible to use both ID and name attribute in a single bin? Yes, we can use. Both ID attribute and name attribute, both we can use for a single bin. By using both the values, we can get the respective bin object. Then after that, I discussed with you like what there scopes for the beans in Spring applications. Scopes I provided. To provide scopes to the bean components, the Spring has provided the following scope. Nearly how many scopes are provided here now? Singleton scope, prototype scope, request scope, session scope, global session scope. Then after that, what next one here now? Application scope and WebSocket scope. So I explained one time. Then majorly here we are going to use two types of scopes. And in our standalone applications, we are going to use two types of scopes. What are the two types of scopes now? Singleton scope and a prototype scope. What is a singleton scope now? In a Spring configuration file, for bean one definition, one object will be created. In a Spring configuration file, for every definition of the bean, one separate object will be created. Then we can access any number of times get bean method. Every time calling of get bin for a particular bin, every time it will return the same object. It will not return multiple objects. I think so I shown that proof also. Have I shown any programming proof for that? Right, sir. This is the meaning of it. IOC content will create a separate bean object for each and every bean configuration in a Spring configuration file. This is a default scope for all the beans. If we access multiple times get bean method, then single bean object reference value will be returned every time. If we access multiple times get bean for a particular bean object, then single bean object reference value will be written every time. This is about like what there singleton scope. Have I discussed anything about prototype? No, I think so. No, we have not discussed about prototype. Have I completed prototype? Right, sir. What is the meaning of this prototype actually? What exactly the meaning of this prototype scope? No, very simple. It is not a default scope. It is not a default scope for beans. It is not default scope for beans. Okay, fine, good. If it is not default scope, then what is the meaning of this prototype scope now? Right, sir. It will allow to create a separate bean object for each and every request. For each and every request, that is for each and every call of get bean method. 10 times if we call get bean method, 10 objects will be created. The 10 object reference values will be provided. All of you observe carefully. Right, sir. Now it will increase duplicate objects. Every time call of get bean method, if we call, every time creating new object, in a sense, duplicate objects will be increased. So less utilization is available for prototype. Less utilization, but we are able to get maximum. We are going to utilize like what there no singleton objects, singleton scope, singleton objects we are going to use. Why? Because in number of applications we need singleton objects, especially when we go for MVC based applications. where controller object is required. That controller object should be a singleton object. Only one object for our application we have to maintain in MVC based applications. So because of that reason, max we are going to utilize Singleton Scope. Lesser scope is available to use like what their prototype. But the concept is what they, in the case of prototype, every time call of getBean method, a new bean object is going to be created. Now let us check this clearly. I think so. Let me check it whether I shown that proof or not. If I complete it, then I'll go for the next concepts now. Otherwise, then I will show that proofs. Then after that, I'll go for our content. Right. So all of you are using IntelliJ IDEA. All of you are using IntelliJ IDEA and Eclipse. Both all of you are using. Right, sir. Let me complete a few more topics in IOC container. After that, I will go for. After that, I will go for Maven. How to prepare applications with Maven, so that we will continue with Maven. The remaining part of the programs we are going to say every time Maven. But up to that, we have to complete this content. Right, sir. Now here, observe this clearly. In a Spring configuration file, yes, I think I shown with the prototype also. That examples I shown with the prototype also. When I execute this prototype, whenever we request for a particular bean, number of times we are able to get that bean objects. If I run this example here, we are able to get number of times that bean objects here we are getting. Right, sir. And you may have one question here exactly. You may have one question there. Observe carefully. Yeah, guys, observe carefully. What is the main difference between bean factor and application context? No, bean factory is following what it is following there. No, lazy loading or eager loading, lazy initialization or eager initialization, lazy initialization. Am I right or not? But application context is following what? Eager in the sense like what? No, at the time of creating application context container, all bean objects are creating. Am I right or not? So application context is following creating all bean objects at the time of initializing, at the time of initializing application context. At the time of creating application context, all the bean objects are created. Okay, but here what I are telling there, whenever we specify prototype, no, for every time call of getBean method, a new object is created. Then both the points are opposite or not? Application context nature is what? Bean object will be created at the time of creating bean application context. But what I'm telling there with this prototype scope, no, in the case of application context, the prototype scope is what there? At the time of calling this getBean method, then only a new bean object is creating. So both are against our rules and regulations or not? Let me check once here. Let me check once what it is going to be happen. Try to observe carefully. Static block here we have taken. Inside the static block, what we are providing there, just I want to say customer and student. Customer is available where? Spring configuration file. This is what there, customer. It's okay. But why we are getting the student now? In a tested.java customer only. Okay, nice, good, no problem. Now observe carefully. Here, what we are providing there, this one. Now in the customer, now static block we have used. Whenever we have used static block, now their customer bean loading that we provided. Next one is what? After that, after completion of this, what we have to do there? And public. Then what next one here? Constructor. Customer. Then here I want to say s out. Then customer bean instantiation in the sense like what? No, creating object. These things we provided. Observe carefully. If I specify singleton, for example, if I specify singleton, what is the meaning of singleton? No, per definition, one bean object will be created. This is as per the concept. The concept is matched in application context. At the time of creating application context, for every bean definition, a separate bean object will be created. That bean object will be written here. That's okay, fine. Now here, what we are having then a singleton ID is what there? C1. C1 is an ID. In a tested.java, multiple times we call getBean with C1. All the times we are going to get the same object or different object. I want to check. Now let me execute this program here. Observe carefully. There we are able to get what we are getting there. First, at the time of loading our application context, there we are getting customer bean loading, customer bean initialization. Same object difference is written. Okay, let us see this point here. Now inside this, just I want to stop the program execution here. Now here, I want to say like what there, SOH, I want to say application context created. Application context is created. That's okay. There I want to stop my flow of execution. System.in.read method. I'll pass the flow of execution. If I click on enter button, get bin method will be executed. Now here I want to say like what there, SOH accessing get bin method one time. Okay. Next one is I want to say like what there, system.in.read. System.in.read. Okay. The next one is after completion of this, another thing is like what there. Here I want to display, I want to access this once again. No, SOH. Here what I'm telling there, accessing get bean method second time. Okay. Now here what I will do there, system.in.read method semicolon. Similarly, these two things I want to copy. And fourth time also be I want to say. Now this time it will be third time. Third time, right sir. Now remaining part is the fourth time also here I want to display. Observe carefully. But this time I don't want to use this one. Right sir. Fourth time. This is my program. Now try to observe carefully. Then which scope I provided, sir? Singleton scope. Singleton scope I provided. Observe carefully. At the time of creating application context, what happened? Whenever we are calling getBean method, what happened? By this, we are able to get some conclusion there. Now, understand this clearly. Let me run this example. If we run this example, if we execute this program here, observe carefully. Customer bean loading, customer bean initialization. Why? Because at the time of creating application context itself, customer bean loading and customer bean initialization. Okay. Anyway, then first time might be it is giving some problem here. Again, re-execute this one, stop and return. Again, I want to execute this program. Then we are able to get clear-cut information. Customer bean loading, customer bean initialization, application context is created. Click on enter button. Now we are getting customer object, same object. I think here we are not displaying that reference value. It's okay, no issues for it. Now customer, one time we called get bean method, that time we are getting it. That means object is created at what time? There no application context creation time only. Click on one more time. Again the same object we are getting second time. Second time calling of get bean method. Again get third time calling get bean method, same object difference we are getting. Now fourth time also be same we are getting. That's okay, fine. This is in the case of what there, Singleton Scope. Same thing I want to achieve with the prototype. What it is going to be happen? In place of this, what it is going to be happen? Now try to observe this clearly. Prototype. Observe carefully here whether this bean object is created at the time of creating application context or not in prototype. Understand this. If it is created, then what will happen? For every time call of get bean method. If it is not created, then what will happen? Every time calling of this get bean method. Now let us see this point here. Here itself we are able to conclude. Now prototype scope here we are using. Now let me execute it. Tell me, when I provide prototype, what happened here now? At the time of creating application context, that bean is not created by recognizing prototype. So application context will create bean objects at the time of creating application context by checking scopes of the beans. If the scope is a singleton, then object will be created at the time of creating application context. If the scope is not a singleton, if the scope is prototype, no, at the time of creating application context, bean objects are not created. When bean objects are created there, when we call get bean method. Anyway, then I want to re-execute it. First time it is not working. I don't know in IntelliJ IDEA. Let me execute one more time here. Right, sir. Cursor is not existed here. Now we are getting it. Customer bean loading, customer bean initialization. Despite that, bean access, get bean method, one time we accessed. So at the time of creating application context, bean object is not created. But when we call get bean method, then only it is created. Please understand the change here. Next one is when I click on second time. Again, what happened there? Bean loading only one time in entire Java applications now. Bytecode will be loaded only one time. But second time bean object is initialized or not? This time a different bean object here we are getting or not? Now second time bean get bean method is called. Next one, customer bean initialization again. Another object we are getting third time. Next fourth time, again bean initialization, another new bean is created fourth time. So what is the conclusion here we are getting there? The conclusion will be very clear. Tell me guys, you only tell me what is the conclusion here we are getting there inside this prototype scope now. The point is very much clear. If we provide prototype scope, if we provide prototype scope to the beans in a Spring configuration file, then what next one again? Now tell me. Then application context container will not create bean object at the time of creating application context. Okay, it will create bean objects when we access get bean method for a particular bean. It will when we access get bean method for a particular bean. That's the point here we have to understand. This is a specification for what their prototype scope. Okay, specification for what their prototype scope. Leave this content here. This is the content here what I shown clearly. Understand this one. Then after that, different scopes are available. Anyway, all the remaining scopes are going to be utilized in a web module, not here. In a standalone applications only, in a core module only, then a singleton scope and a prototype scope only. We are not going to use any other scopes here. Okay, fine. But at least information point of I'm giving there. Request scope in the sense a separate bean object will be created for each and every request. And a session scope in the sense a separate bean object will be created for each and every session. And global session scope, a separate bean object will be created for each and every portlet context, in which way servlets are available. In the same way portlets are available in portal application development we are going to use there. So for every portlet context is a portlet session, a separate global session object will be created. Application scope, for every servlet context object, a separate bean object will be created. WebSocket now, for every WebSocket life cycle, WebSocket is having some life cycle there. For every WebSocket life cycle, a separate bean object will be created. But even the last WebSocket scope and global session scope may be supported, may not be supported by the web applications depending on the servers. Answer my point here. But even in web module also, you can see request scope, session scope, and maybe application scope. These three scopes only we are going to see. Remaining scopes may be supported, may not be supported. There is no guarantee to achieve these things even in a web module also. Right, sir. They are the points here we can understand. Then after completion of this, so finally we understood every point. But I have a question. What about my question here? We will use the scopes like request scope, comma, session scope, and so on in web applications. In web applications, not in standalone applications. But my question is, if we use request scope, comma, session scope, comma, global session scope, and so on in standalone applications, then container will raise an error. What error here container is able to raise? Now we will see that. For example, if I use these scopes in our standalone applications, what we are able to get? That's my question here. What we are able to get, we are going to understand this point clearly. Observe carefully. All right, sir. Now let me open this. Spring configuration file, I don't want to use a prototype scope. Just I want to use like what there request scope. Request scope. That's it. A request. I want to use that. Okay. Let me check it. What is going to be happen there? Not required to even get it 4 times or 3 times. All these objects here. I want to remove. Yeah, not required. I want to remove all these things. Just only one time I'm trying to access. Not required to get all these remaining things now. Right, sir. Only one time access is get bean method. Then what is going to be happen? Request scope now. Let me execute this. We are getting an exception. Illegal thread state exception. No scope registered for scope name request. Wait. Hmm. Definitely we are able to get an exception. Then I will show that exception here. Illegal state exception. Then what is that exception here we are getting there? No scope registered with the name request scope. Finally, that's okay. This is a meaning here we can understand. In the standalone application, if you are getting, if you specify any particular request scope or session scope and all these things, no, then we are able to get an exception like exception thread main java.lang.illegal state exception, illegal state exception. So what is that state exception here? No scope registered for the scope name request scope. This is what we are able to get clearly. Right. Error like this is what we are getting, not error, an exception. An exception like java.lang.illegal state exception, no scope is registered for the scope name request scope. Right, sir. The same thing, remaining all scopes, if we provide there, the same message here we are able to get. Leave this point here. But we have one more question now. In the case of prototype and in the case of bean factory, in the case of a prototype in application context, prototype scope, if we provide there, when a bean object is created, at the time of calling get bean, not at the time of creating application context. Then people are asking this question like what there. So now prototype scope is almost all same as bean factory. In the case of bean factory also, what happened there? When we access get bean, then only we are getting bean object. In the case of application context with the prototype scope, no, the same scenario we are getting. So people are asking, then why we need to go for application context? This is a question here. Same functionality is available in both bean factory and application context with the prototype scope. But why? What is the requirement to come for this? People are asking that. But at the same time, you forgot one more statement. What I said to you. Bean factory is an outdated, and it is not providing support for advanced features of the Spring applications, like AOP maybe, or security maybe, or maybe transactions maybe, or web module applications maybe. For all these things, Bean factory is not giving any support. Bean factory is not giving support for all, but application context is providing support for all of them. There we are getting difference now. Of course, by default bean factory is providing like what there. Say for one more point I'm telling to you, observe carefully. One more point I'm telling to you, by default nature of the bean factory I've given, by default nature of the application context I've given. Answer my point here. By default bean factory is accessing, is providing get bean method. Sorry, by default bean factory is providing bean object when we call get bean method. You may think the default by default it is following prototype scope inside the bean factory. I get my point or not? If it is creating a separate bean object for every time call of get bean, in the sense, by default it might be following which what there now prototype scope. But an application context, what it is going on there at the time of creating application context, bean object is creating, in the sense, by default it is following what scope there now Singleton scope. There may be the scopes point of view difference is available. That's why we are getting that particular content. Let me check it. Then I have a doubt still. Let me check this one. In the case of like what I'm telling there, observe carefully. In a Spring configuration file, I want to specify like what there. Observe carefully. I want to specify Singleton scope I specified, but Singleton scope I provided for my bean component. Now here, inside my application context, I don't want to use this application context here. In place of this, what I want to use there, bean factory. Now let me use that bean factory. Bean factory is equal to new XML bean factory. Then inside this new resource object here, we have to use class path resource here. I want to use inside this class path resource. Instead of using two lines, I'm using the single line here. There we can understand the same location. Let me paste this. Same location I provided. Now inside this, what I'm trying to do there, bean factor is created. Just I want to write like what the bean factor is created. Bean factor is created. Observe carefully, guys. Bean factory we are getting. Now inside this, what method here we have to call there factory.bean. Factory.bean here we have to call. That's okay. This is my application. So in the Spring configuration, what scope I provided there? Singleton scope. Now here tester.java, what I provided here, no, right sir, bean factory I've used it. Now observe carefully at what time we are creating this object. Now here I want to use, after specifying that, I want to use system.in.read method. Now here we can write like what there, after completion of this, here sout, here I want to say accessing get bean method one time. Then after that, system.in.read method. Same scenario. I want to use another time. Second time also here we are trying to access. Now let me check this point here. Now here I want to take like what customer2. Here also be customer2. Here we are going to access. Now here second time. Not required. Now just only two times I want to check. By that we are able to get some clarity. First of all, tell me guys. First of all, tell me what is the basic nature of the bean factory at the time of creating bean factory object, or when we call get bean method, bean object is creating. At what time bean object is creating in the case of bean factory? At the time of calling get bean method only bean object is created. That's okay. There's a point. But in Spring configuration for bean, what is the scope we provided here? Singleton scope. For example, singleton scope. That means what is the meaning of this singleton scope here? No, only one object has to be created. Same object has to be written every time call of get bean method. For definition, one object. Okay. Listen carefully. Even though I removed this singleton scope here, I did not specify any scope here. By default, what it is doing now, try to observe this first. Then after that, we will go for this content here. Now let me execute this. Bean factory is created. Now here what we are getting there, customer bean loading, customer bean initialization, one object we are getting. Second object is also be created. So second object, that means not second object is created. Directly it is like what there? Directly we are getting same object difference here second time. Okay. Then what we are getting? All of you are getting clarity on this execution here, no? So when we access that respective bean get bean method, then only object is created. This is default nature here. You can observe this clearly. Customer bean loading, customer bean initialization. First time call of get bean, then it is loading and initiated. Second time calling there, directly same bean object reference is written, not to create any new object. Is it clear or not? For example, this is the default nature of the like what there bean factory. For example, here if I use a scope is equal to what scope here I want to use there? Singleton scope, in the sense, what is the meaning of it now? Same single bean object has to be created, the same reference has to be generated. That means that bean factory is doing the same singleton or not? Answer my point, observe carefully. All right, sir. Don't get any confusion. The points are very much clear. I'm trying to provide there. Now bean factory is created. 1 minute. Click on enter button. Bean loading, bean initialization. One time here we are getting object, first object. Second object here we created here. That means same object difference is written or not. So singleton. That means bean factory is following singleton. By default is following singleton. Even if its specific scope is singleton, then by default that singleton scope is followed here. That's okay. Uh, but observe carefully. Here the point is like what I'm telling to you. For example, if I provide prototype scope, if I provide, then what is going to be happen? Observe carefully. Again, bean factory is created. Customer bean loading, customer bean initialization, and object is created. Second time is also be bean initialization is going on. Now another new bean object is created. So here the point is what? Scopes related. If you want to go for the scopes now, in the case of bean factory, observe carefully. Scope is what there? Same object or different object? Understand this. Scope is related to what? Either creating the same object reference every time, calling getBean method, or a different object is created every time, call of getBean method. Only this will be decided on the base of scope. At what time bean objects are created is totally depending on what they know containers, what we are using. So here specifications are available. In the case of bean factory, whether you specify singleton or prototype, that doesn't matter. When we call getBean, then only bean object will be written. At the time of creating bean factory, bean object will not be created. But in the case of application context, what is the specification here? In the case of application context, at the time of creating application context, all bean objects are created. Depending on the scope there, if it is a singleton scope, then only it will be. By default, singleton scope is available. But if we provide prototype scope now, at the time of creating application context, bean object will not be created. When we access getBean method, then only new object will be created. When we access getBean method, a new object will be created every time. Understand my point here? In the case of bean factory, what happened there? Even though we specified singleton scope, bean object will be created, is not created at the time of like what there at the time of creating bean factory. Only bean object is created when we call getBean method. Whether it is the same bean, the reference value will be written or not, depending on the scope. But bean factory main concept is what there. When we call getBean, then only bean object will be created. Even in the case of singleton and as well as in prototype. If it is singleton, same object reference value will be written every time call of getBean. If it is prototype, every time call of getBean, a new object will be created. Same object or new object is decided on the basis of what their scopes. But bean factory nature is what there. When we call getBean, then only object will be provided. But in the case of application, what is the default nature? Default nature is what there. At the time of creating application context, bean object is created. When it is a case no, if we specify singleton scope. So same object. At the time of creating application context, whatever the object is created, that object will be written. In the case of what there no application context, singleton scope. But with the application context, if we specify prototype no, at the time of creating application context, bean object will not be created. At the time of creating application context, no bean will be created. But when we call getBean method, then only bean object will be created every time. That is a specific rule for what they know application context. By default, application context will create all bean objects at the time of creating context, at the time of creating what their application context. If the scope is singleton, it will be happen, same object difference will be written. But if the scope is prototype, no, at the time of creating application context, bean object will not be created. When we call getBean method, then only bean object will be created. This is a small exclusion in the case of like what their application context. Yes, I can note even that point also there. Where we are right here now here. Observe carefully. Note up a point here what I am telling there. I think somebody else has asked this question to me. Have we got clarity? Melvin Ross. Are you getting clarity? What exactly the point I said to you? Right, nice. Let me give that point here. In general, application context in general, application context is having singleton scope. In this case, application context will create bean object for the bean definition, and it will return the same bean object for every time call of get bean method. Okay, fine. This is the point here we can understand. But if we provide prototype scope, to the beans in a Spring configuration file, then application context will not create bean objects at the time of creating application context. It will create a new bean object. Every time call of get beans method. Every time call of what there get bean method. That's it. Now this is a small change in our application context behavior. No change is available in bean factory. Only the change is available in a application context. Right, sir. Now this is what exactly the content here we can understand now. Leave this particular point here. Next one is after completion of this. Now here in the XML configuration, in the bean tag, what we completed up to now. Now tell me what we completed. Class we completed. Am I right or not? Name attribute we completed. ID attribute we completed. Almost all. What we completed here, no scope attribute is also be completed. But here I have a question. What is my question here? Now tell me to the scope attribute, or before that, to the class attribute, we are providing our own class name. For the ID attribute, we are writing our own. For name attribute also, we are writing in our own. But for the scope attribute, we are writing only fixed values, predefined values only. We are not writing our own data. Are get my point or not? That means indirectly what I am asking to you, my question is, in Spring applications, is it possible to define our own scopes? In Spring applications, is it possible to define our own scopes? Yes, answer is what there? Yes, it is possible. Answer I'm telling you, yes, it is possible. Observe carefully. Yes, it is possible. It is possible to define our own scopes in Spring applications. It is possible to define our own scopes in Spring applications by using scope interface. By using scope interface provided by Spring framework. By using scope interface and custom scope configurer. By using custom scope configurer. Another one. By using custom scope configurer class. By using these two, we are able to define our own scopes. All right, sir. Now, before understanding our scopes, before understanding the scopes here, I would like to give some information. If you want to go for this custom scopes, user defined scopes, no, first we have to understand one basic topic from core Java. What is the topic here we record there? The topic would be thread local. What is the topic? Thread local topic. If you know, then I will move to the user defined scopes in Spring framework. Then only we are able to understand. Otherwise, it is not possible to understand. Okay. Now let us see. Then what exactly the meaning of thread local? What is the meaning of this thread local? I will show some points. Try to understand this clearly. Now in Java, there are 4 scopes for the data. What are the 4 scopes for the data? public, protected, default, and private. If we declare anything as public, that will be available throughout the application. If we declare anything as a protected, that will be available up to the current package and the child classes available in other packages. If we declare anything as a default, that will be available up to the present package. But if we declare anything as a private, that will be available within the same class. Not possible to get it in outside of the present class. Okay. But we can define one more scope along with this public, protected, default, private. That scope will be thread scope. We can prepare one more scope, that is what their thread scope. What is the meaning of this thread scope? No, I want to make available the data in how many methods my present thread is visiting, how many methods where my thread is visiting. Up to that I want to provide my data. How can you understand this particular point? Try to understand it. Previously, maybe in Puranas, Ashwamedha Yagam, Ashwamedha Yagam. I think Rama has might be conducted one occasion, Ashwamedha Yagam. What is the meaning of this Ashwamedha Yagam? Lord Rama has sent one horse to the places. How many places that horse is covering? He decided that is a Rama kingdom. Almost all Kabja. Lord Rama has occupied the total places. How much space, how much place in the earth that Ashwamedha, that horse is taken, no? Up to that, the Rama has occupied. That means he decided these are the boundaries for his country. How many places that a horse is visiting? Up to that, he decided that is my scope. Similarly, if I keep some data in a thread, how many threads, how many methods are visited by my thread? How many methods are executed by my thread? Up to that methods, I want to make available this data. It is not like public, it is not like protected, it is not like default, it is not like private. How many methods are visited by my thread? In the same class or in different classes, that doesn't matter. How many methods are visited by my thread? Up to that, I want to make available my data. Now that data scope is thread local, thread scope. That scope is what there? Thread scope. One example I want to say, by this we are able to understand what is thread scope at least. Observe carefully. For example, I have taken class A. Inside this class A, void M1 method. Okay. Now here, void M1 method. Here some data, some implementation I have written. Leave it. Next one is class B. Inside this void M2 method. Here also be some implementation is existed, but here what I am trying to say, no, a small a is equal to new a. Then we call a dot M1 method. Next one, class C. Inside this class C, void M3 method. Then inside this I am calling M4 method. Then here void M4 method is existed. Then inside this, just what I'm trying to do there, b small b is equal to new b. Then b dot M2 method. For example, in class A, void x1 method is available. Okay. Inside this class B, void x2 method is available. Inside class C, here also be void x3 method is existed. Okay. Now observe carefully whatever the program here I have written. First of all, class A M1 method, where x1 method. M2 method, inside this M2 method we are calling M1 method, x2 method. Inside class C, M3 method, where we are calling M4, M4 method is calling M2 method. There what we are having then x3 method. Now observe carefully. Now class test. Public static void main string array args. inside this, if we provide inside this thread T is equal to new thread. Okay, observe carefully. Now I want to write thread class separately. Now class my thread extends the thread or implements runnable interface, whatever it may be. Now inside this, I need to override public void run method. Inside this run method, just I would like to create an object for a small a is equal to, not this one, c small c is equal to new c. Then inside this, just I'm calling like what there, c dot m3 method. C dot what method? M3 method. Okay. Now here my thread object here I have to create the my thread empty is equal to new my thread object we created. Next one is like what there, my empty dot start method. Observe carefully. This is purely core Java program. Just I'm demonstrating what is thread scope. Fine, sir. Whenever we call empty dot start, thread will be created. By default, the thread will execute run method or not? Automatically, the thread will execute which method? Run method. Inside this run method, thread will execute object creation for C and it is calling C dot M3. Then immediately the thread will go to which method? M3 method of C class C or not? It will not move to X3 method. Please remember this. It will go to M3 method. Inside this M3 method, we are calling M4 method or not? Again, the thread will come to M4 method. Inside this M4 method, creating object for B and calling M2 method. Again, flow of execution will come to what there? M2 method, not to X2 method. Inside this again, object is created for class A, calling A.M1 method. Same thread will go to class A M1 method, where it is executed, not to X1 method. Tell me, out of this, now tell me, how many methods I have written, sir, overall here? How many methods I have written here? No, observe carefully. Methods are like what there? M1 method, M2 method, M3 method, M4 method, X1 method, X2 method, X3 methods. These many methods I have written overall. But out of all these methods, how many methods are accessed by my thread now? My thread accessed in this case, first directly it will go to the M3 method. From M3 it will come to the M4. From M4 it will come to the M2. From M2 it will come to the M1. Only these methods are accessing our thread. Am I right or not? Now observe carefully. Thread will have scope up to these methods only. Thread is not having a scope inside this X1, X2 and X3 methods. So now my requirement is for how many methods my thread is executing. In how many methods my thread has been executed. Up to that, I want to provide some data. In how many methods? In how many methods my thread is available? Up to that methods. Inside that methods only, I want to make available my data. I don't want to make available my data to X1, X2, X3. I want to send my data to M1, M2, M3, M4 up to these methods only. Why? Because my thread has been executed these methods only. In how many methods my thread is executing, up to that methods I want to provide some data. In which methods my thread is not available, there I don't want to provide the data. So the scope of the data, scope for this particular data is called as what? Thread scope. Scope for this particular data is what? Thread scope. Sir, all of you are following the point about this thread scope or not? Clear cut information. What is the meaning of thread scope? No, up to how many methods our thread is visited, up to that only we want to make available our data. Other methods we don't want to make available the data. So to achieve this particular thing, we need to go for like what there? Thread scope. But how we are able to achieve this thread scope in core Java applications, if you have to this, by using thread local class, we are able to achieve this thread scope. By using what? Thread local class, we are able to achieve thread scope. Okay, fine. Observe carefully how we are able to achieve this thread local, how to use this thread local. Understand this point here. Thread local class, here we have to use, inside this thread local, we are having some methods. What methods are available? Public void set method is available, some parameter. If you want to set any data in the thread local, there we have to use set method. Public object or public string get method is available. If you want to get data from the thread scope, we have to use that. Public void or public something else like what there object initial value method is available. If we are not providing any data through set method, and if we call get method, we didn't provide any data inside the thread local, but we are calling get method, where to get some default values, initial value method will be executed. Initial value method will provide some default value when we access get method without setting the data. Without calling set method, without setting the data through set method, if we call get method, initial value method will be executed internally. It will provide the default data through get method. So these are the various methods which are available in our thread local. Okay. After this, I will show exactly the proofs also for this. Right. So then after that, I want to execute my program. I want to prepare a program to provide thread scope. How we are able to provide thread scope for our data there? Observe carefully. I'll take one separate project, guys. Right, sir. Let's observe this clearly. Anyway, number of applications are available. I want to show another application here. Let me prepare another application. New, not here. File, new, project. And then project is something else. app09. Everything is okay. Click on create button. This window or new window? New window. Okay. I don't want to disturb the present window. So here what we have to say, what I'm telling to you, if you want to prepare any thread local, separate local, there we have to prepare like what there, a separate package here I want to prepare, Java package. Now here I want to provide com dot Durgasoft dot app09 dot something else I want to prepare some util classes, some utility classes I want to prepare. Where first of all right click here and the new Java class I want to prepare. What is this Java class here I want to create there? Custom thread local. What is the class name here? Custom thread local. This is a class I prepared now. For this class, I need to extend this from extends thread local. Thread local. Right, sir. That I provided. Thread local. We provided. Okay. Inside this thread local, I want to provide like what there. Let me just I prepared custom thread local. That's it. Not more than that. Nothing I provided. Later I will show each and every point. So inside these, which methods are available? Thread local, set method, get method, initial value method. In initial value method, nothing I provided. Even I didn't override it. By default, initial value method will return null value. Okay, fine. This is about like what there custom thread local. Next one is after that. What I want to prepare there, I want to prepare some other class here. I want to prepare thread classes. I want to prepare thread classes. I want to prepare. Then after that, I will prepare main class later on. New Java package I want to take that package value would be com dot Durgasoft dot app09 dot. Just I want to prepare like what the threads. Threads. I want to prepare that class now. Now here I need to prepare some thread class. What is that class here? I have to prepare the thread class. Say for example, thread. Thread is a class here. Thread is a class. What is this thread? Thread one class here I want to prepare. Inside this thread one, what I'm going to provide there extends thread I have to provide. Then inside this, which method here we have to override the run method. Inside this run method, we have to remove this particular one. Here we have to write some logic. This is thread one. Okay, fine, nice. Next one is after that. Let me prepare another thread class now. Right click on it and a new class. Now get thread two. Now get what we have to do there extends thread. Inside this extends the thread, I have to provide like what is the run method. Later I'll provide implementation for it. So how many thread classes I prepared now? 2 thread classes here I prepared. Observe carefully. Now here, I want to take a separate class in util. Inside this util package, custom thread local is available. There I want to prepare some other class. Normal Java class here I want to prepare. Util or maybe any class here we can take, no issues. Say for example, I want to take class A. Simple class A. Inside this class A, what I'm trying to do there, I want to take two methods. What are the two methods? You know, public void m1 method. Next, another method, public void m2 method. Two methods here we have taken. Clear or not? Public void m1 method, public void m2 method. Now inside this thread one, run method is available or not? So here, observe carefully here. I'm trying to create static. Now I want to declare it is a public anyway. We are dealing with multiple packages now. Public static custom thread local. Thread local is equal to new custom thread local constructor. So inside where we prepared this now, we prepared this under thread one. Okay. Anyway, thread one will come to this run method. Inside this, then what I will do now, thread local dot set of, there I want to provide data is like what there, AAA. Inside the thread one scope, inside thread one, there is a scope. Inside the scope, what data I provided now? AAA data I provided. Okay. Then after that, I'm going to create an object. Please remember this. Here I'm going to take same object. Thread one constructor here I'm going to take. Now it will be like what there? Public thread one, a small a. Why? Because I want to call a class methods from this thread one class. That's why I've taken this setup. In multi-threading, you might be aware about it. I have to import this. Right, sir. Thread one constructor is not defined here. Inside this, this is a thread one. What is the problem here? Okay, fine. Thread one, that's okay. Then inside this, then what we have to do, this dot a is equal to a. That means I'm injecting a class object to thread one to access a particular method. Which method here I'm trying to access there? A dot m1 method. Observe carefully the flow of execution. When we create a thread one will come to the run method of the thread one class or not? Inside this, in a thread one scope, what we specify the data, a data we specified. After that, we are calling a dot m1 method or not? When we call a dot m1 method, flow of execution will go to a class m1 method or not? Inside this a class m1 method is available. Here I want to display thread one data. Thread one scope data here I can display. System dotted println. I want to specify thread one colon. Thread one colon thread local data. Will be what we have to do there. Simply here I have to specify where I provided there thread one dot thread local dot get method. In thread one, thread local is available. It is maintaining thread scope dot get data. Thread one local data here we are trying to get here. Okay, observe carefully. So here we are able to get this particular data. This is in M1 method. Why? Because M1 method is called from where? M1 method is called from thread one run method. Answer my point or not? Okay. Similarly, thread 2 is available. Inside this thread 2 also I need to inject a value, a object, a small a semicolon. Next one is what? Public thread 2 constructor a small a. Then inside this dot a is equal to a. Now observe carefully here what I am trying to do now. Apart from this, here we are going to declare static public static custom thread local. Now get this is like what the thread local is equal to new custom thread local that we provided. When we call thread to flow of execution, the thread will come to run method. Inside this run method, what I'm trying to provide there, just I'm trying to provide thread local dot set of BBB. That means in a thread to scope, which data is available? BBB. Now get a dot m2 method. We are calling m2 method. Then flow of execution will come to m2 method. Observe careful. In thread one, what is the data is specified in the thread one scope? No, a. In a thread two scope, what is specified? No, BBB. Thread one is accessing a class m1 method. Thread two is accessing a class m2 method. So in a class m2 method, what I'm trying to provide here, right. Inside this, then what I'm trying to provide here, same line here we have to provide. Copy this. Now here I have to provide like what there. This is thread 2, thread local data. Thread 2 dot thread local dot get method. Okay, thread 2 dot thread local dot get method. All together, what I'm telling to you, observe carefully. Thread 1 is accessing a class m1 method. Thread 2 is accessing b class a class m2 method. Thread 1 will have scope up to m1 method of class K. Thread 2 will have scope m2 method of a class. In thread 1 scope, I kept the data a. In thread 2 scope, I kept the data is what there BBB. A is available in a class inside m1 method only. BBB is available in a class inside m2 method only. I define like this. Okay, now let me take the test class now. New package com dot durgasoft.abb09.test. Insert this test package. Now let me prepare a Java class, main class. Now it would be like what the test. Now inside this, what we required here, main method is required. Then inside this main method, first of all, create an object for class here. Then create a thread one object. Thread one object. Now here both here we have to get it now. Right, we have to import this. Now next one is thread one also here we have to import. Right, sir. Thread one T1 is equal to new thread one of a semicolon. Now let me create thread 2 T2 is equal to new thread 2 of a. That means observe clearly two threads here we created where we passed a is a parameter in order to access thread 1 dot. That means in order to access m1 method in thread 1, m2 method in thread 2. In both the thread classes, I passed a is a reference now. Then after that, T1 dot start method. Sorry. T1 dot start method. Then T2 dot start method. Observe carefully. In T1 and T2, both the methods are started. T1 dot start and T2 dot start. Two threads are created. First thread will go to thread 1 dot run method. Inside this thread 1 dot run method, we set the data to the thread 1 local, that is AAA. Then a dot m1 method we called. Then flow of execution will come to like what there, a dot m1 method. Inside this m1 method, thread 1 thread local data, thread 1 dot thread local dot get. Observe carefully. Now second here, in a test class, when we access T2 dot start method, automatically another thread will be created. The thread will go to thread 2 dot thread 2 class run method. Inside this, we set BBB data to the thread local in a thread scope. A dot m2 method we are calling. Flow of execution will go to a class m2 method. Inside this m2 method, we are displaying the data like what there. Then the data will be thread 2 thread local data thread 2 dot thread local dot get method. So I want to check in m1 method which thread scope is available, and I want to check in m2 method which thread scope is available. But I know as I called m1 method in thread 1 run method, m2 method in thread 2 run method, I know m1 method is available in a thread 1 scope, m2 method is available in a thread 2 scope. Inside the m1 method, thread 1 scope is available. Inside this m2 method, thread 2 scope is available. Now here I want to be specify m1 method colon. Now here I want to specify M2 method colon. That one also I want to specify clearly. By that we are able to get much clarity. Now let me run this example, guys. Test.java file here I want to execute. Run test.java. There we are able to get some outputs. Let it complete this execution process. There we are able to get some outputs. Observe carefully. M1 thread 1 thread local data is what there? Data, not a date. M2 thread 2 thread local data is what there? BBB. In M1 method, which thread scope is available? Thread 1, where the data is what? AAA. In M2 method, thread 2 scope is available, where the local data is what? No, BBB. Okay, fine. For example, what I want to do there, let me check this point once again. No, data, it's okay. Observe carefully. Inside this M1 method, I want to check. Thread 2 scope. M1 method, thread 2 local data, thread 2 dot thread local dot get. Inside this M1 method, which thread scope is available? First thread 1 scope. But I'm trying to get thread 2 scope data. No thread. Thread is not having scope inside this M1 method. Thread 2 is not having scope inside this M1 method. What we are able to get? That is one point here. Now tell me here. Now here we have to specify no. Observe carefully. Now here S out. Here we provided this data. Observe carefully. M2 method. Now here I want to get thread 1. Thread local data. Now here thread 1 dot thread local dot get method. Where is the problem here? Get method. Okay, 1 minute. String is not required, right? Right. It also. So we observe clearly in M1 method, thread 1 scope is available, thread 2 scope is not available. In M2, thread 2 scope is available, thread 1 scope is not available. So in M1 method, when we access thread 1 scope data, AAA we are able to get. In M1 method, thread 2 scope data, if we are getting no value will come. In place of that null value, we are able to get. In M2 method, thread 2 scope is available, where if we get thread 2 local data, BBB we are able to get. But in M2 method, if we call thread 1 scope data, their null value we are able to get. Let me execute this. Observe this, guys, what we are getting. M1 thread local data is what? AAA. M2 thread local data is what there? BBB. So up to this is right information we are getting or not? M1 method, thread 1 local data is AAA. M2 method, thread 2 local data is BBB. M2 method, thread 1 local data is what? In M2, which thread scope is available? Thread 1, in M2, thread 2 scope is available. But thread 1 local data is what? No, null. In M1 method, thread 1 scope is available. But here in M1 method, we are trying to display thread 2 scope. Then what value we are getting there? Null value. Got it or not? So in M1 method, thread 1 scope is available. In M2 method, thread 2 scope is available. In M1 method, thread 2 scope value is null. In M2 method, thread 1 scope value is null. Why? Because that thread 1 will have scope up to M1 method only. Thread 1 will not have scope in M2 method. Similarly, thread 2 will have scope in M2 method. It will not have scope in M1 method. That's why we are getting null values. But my requirement is when scope is not available, there we are getting null value. But instead of displaying that null value, I want to send some data, some default message I want to provide. I get my point or not? Some default message here I want to set instead of displaying the null. So if you want to display some default value instead of displaying the null in a custom thread local, I want to override initial value method. Inside this initial value method, what I'm trying to display there, I want to display in the form of a string. What is that value here? This thread doesn't have scope. This thread doesn't have scope in this method. This thread doesn't have scope in this method. Okay, that message here I want to provide. Instead of displaying null values, the default message here we are able to get. Observe carefully. Huh. M2 method, M2 thread local data is BBB. M1 thread local data is AAA. Up to that it's okay proper. M1 M1 method thread 2, scope is not available. M1 thread local data is this thread doesn't have scope in this method. Okay, M2 thread 1 will have scope in M1 method only. Inside this M2 method, thread 2 scope is available. But what I'm trying to display M2 thread 1 thread local data is what there. This thread doesn't have scope in this particular method. This thread doesn't have scope in this particular method. Get my point or not? So if you want to display some default message when we're accessing get method without setting the data, there, if you want to display some data, there we have to go for like what now? Initial value method. Okay, this is the total information about thread local in core Java. This is core Java topic only still. It's not related to Spring Framework. I need this topic. If you want to go for custom threads, no. If you want to go for custom scopes in a Spring Framework, there I need to get this particular topic. Okay, all right, sir. Anyway, then once again I'm telling to you, try to watch this video and get more information. And tomorrow I will show how to define our own scopes in Spring Framework. After that, we'll move to the next concepts there now. Bean life cycle in a Spring Framework that we are going to understand. After moving into the Java configurations and annotations configurations, we'll understand this topic there. But at present, there's thread local topic we discussed here that is required for us. If you want to go for like what there, then custom scopes in Spring Framework. If you want to go there, this topic is required. That's why I discussed about it, right? That's okay, guys. Tomorrow, same time we can come here and I'll continue the remaining part. Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, guys. Thanks a lot.